Hey, so it's my turn now. And this story came from Rick's brother-in-law, his sister's husband. It's a beautiful story about a cowboy, and I think Grandpa likes it so much because a long time ago, Grandpa used to be a cowboy too. And he would take hunters up into the forest to help them hunt and to be able to get elk to feed their families. This is the story of Stubby Pringles. This is a cowboy Christmas story. You're going to love this. Are you ready? High on the mountainside by the little lime cabin in the crisp, clean dusk of the evening, Stubby Pringles swings into saddle. He has shape of bear in the dimness, bundled thick against cold. Double socks, crowd scarred boots, leather chaps with hair out, cover patched corduroy pants, fleece-lined jacket with wear of winters on its bulges body, and heavy gloves, blunt fingers, two gay red bandanas folded together, fat in throat under chin. Battered hat is pulled down to sit on ears, and inside pocket of jacket are rabbit skin earmuffs he can put on to use if he needs them. Stubby Pringles swings up into saddle. He looks out and down over worlds of snow and ice and tree and rock. He spreads arms wide and they embrace whole ranges of hills. He stretches tall and hat brushes stars and sky. He is Stubby Pringle, cowhand of the XXX, and this is his night to howl. He is Stubby Pringle, son of the wild jackass, and he is heading for the Christmas dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. Stubby Pringle swings up and his horse stands like rock. This is the pride of his string, flop-eared, ewe-neck, cat-hip strawberry roan that looks like it should have died weeks ago, but has iron rods for bones and nitroglycerin for blood and can go from here to doomsday with nothing more than mouthfuls of snow for water and tufts of winter-cured bunch grass snatched between drifts for food. It stands like rock. It knows the folly of trying to unseat Stubby. It wastes no energy in futile explosions. It knows that 27 miles of hard winter going are foreordained for this evening, and 27 more of harder uphill return by morning. It has done this before. It is saving the dynamite under its hide for the destiny of a true cow pony, which is to take its rider where he wants to go and bring him back again. Stubby Pringles sits in saddle as he grins into cold and distance and future full of festivity. Join me in a look at what can be seen of him despite the bundling and frosty breath vapor that soon will hang icicles on his nose. Those are the careless, haphazard, scrambled features under the low hat brim, about as handsome as a blue boar's snout. Not much fuzz yet on his chin. Why, shucks, is he just a boy? Don't make that mistake, though his 20th birthday is still 6 weeks away. Don't make the mistake that Hutch Hanley made last summer when he thought this was young, unseasoned stuff and took to ragging Stubby and wound up with his ears pinned back and upper lip split and nose mashed flat and the whole of him dumped into a rain barrel. Stubby has been taking care of himself since he was orphaned at 13. Stubby is doing man's work since he was 15. Well, do you think Hard Rock Harper of the XXX would have anything but an all-around hard-proved hand up here at his farthest winter line camp, sighting old Jake Hanlon, toughest, hard-bitten old cowman ever to ride range? Well, Stubby Pringles flips gloved hand under rump to wipe frost off a saddle. No sense letting it melt into patches of corduroy pants. He slaps his right saddlebag. It contains a burlap wrapped around a 2-pound box of candy. Oh, a fancy chocolates with variegated interiors he acquired 2 months ago and is kept hidden from old Jake. He slaps left side saddlebag. It holds burlap bag wrapped around paper parcel that contains a close folded piece of dress goods and a roll of pink ribbon. Oh, interesting items, yes. Well, they are ammunition for the campaign he has in mind to soften the affection of whichever female of the right vintage among those at the schoolhouse appeals to him most and seems most susceptible. Stubby Pringles settles himself firmly into saddle. He is just another of far scattered, poorly paid, patch-clothed cowhands that inhabits these parts, and likely marks and smells of his calling have not been scrubbed away. Well, he knows that, but this is his night to howl. He is Stubby Pringle, true begotten son of the wildest jackass, and he has been riding a line through hell and high water and winter storms for 2 months without a break, and he has done his share of the work, and more than his share, because old Jake is getting along and slowing down some, and it is his night to stomp the floorboards till schoolhouse shakes and kicks heels up to lanterns and whirl a willing female till she is dizzy enough to see past the patch clothes to the man inside them. He wriggles toes deep into stirrups and settles himself firmly in the saddle. I could have ate them chocolates, says old Jake from the cabin doorway. They wasn't hid good, he says, not good at all. I'd be beaten like a drum, says Stubby, and wrung out like a dirty old dish rag. By who? Says old Jake. By a young'un like you. Why, I'd have tied you in knots afore you knew what was ifin' if you tried. You're a dang-blatted young old fool, he says. A dang-blatted fool riding out on a night like this, if'n it is Christmas Eve, he says. But if I was your age, I reckon I'd be doing it too. He cackles like an old rooster. Squeeze one of them for me, he says, and he steps back inside and closes door. Stubby Pringle is alone out there in the darkening dust, alone with flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hipped roan that can go to the last trumpet call under him, and with a cold of wicked winter around him, and with 27 miles of snow-dumped distance ahead of him. Wah-hoo! He yells. Skip to Maloo, he shouts. Do-si-do and roundabout. He lifts his reins, and the roan sighs and lifts his feet. An easy warming-up amble, they drop over the edge of benchland where the cabin snugs into tall pine trees and on down the great bleak expanse of mountainside. Stubby Pringle spurs along a jingle, jogs upslope through crusted snow. The roan, warm through, moves strong and steady under him. Line cabin and line work are far forgotten things. Back and up in the mighty mass of mountains, why, he is Stubby Pringle, rootin', tootin', hard-working, hard-playing cowhand of the Triple X, heading for the Christmas dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. He tops out on one of the lower ridges. He pulls rein to give the roan a breather. He brushes an icicle off his nose, leans forward and reaches to brush several more off the side bars of the old bit in the bridle. He straightens tall. Far over top of last and lowest ridge on into the valley, he can see tiny specks of glowing allure that are the schoolhouse windows. Light and gaiety and good liquor and fluttering skirts are there. Wah-hoo! He yells. Gals and women and grandmothers, he shouts, raise your skirts and start a-skipping. I'm a-comin'. He slaps spurs to roan, and it leaps like mountain lion, out and down, full into hard gallop down slope, rushing, reckless of crusted drifts and ice-coated bush branches slapping at him. Why, he is Stubby Pringle, born with spurs on, nursed on tarantula juice, and weaned on raw hide, at home in the saddle of a hurricane in the shape of a horse that can race to outer edge of eternity and back, heading now for high jinks and 2 months overdue. Why, he is 10 feet tall, and his horse is gigantic, with wings iron-boned and dynamite-fueled, soaring in 40-foot leaps down the flank of the whitened wonder of a winter world. They slow at the bottom. They stop. They look up at the last rise of the last low ridge ahead. The roan paws frozen ground and snorts twin plumes of frosty vapor. Stubby reaches round to pull down fleece-lined jacket that has worked up a bit up back. He pats his right saddlebag, pats his left saddlebag. He lifts reins to soar up and over the last low ridge. Hold it, Stubby. What is that? Off to the right. He listens. Why, he has ears that can catch snitch of mouse chewing on chunk of bacon rind beyond the log wall by his bunk. He hears sound of axe striking wood. Well, now, what kind of dong-bonging, ding-busted, dang-blatted fool would be chopping wood on a night like this and on Christmas Eve with a dance underway at the schoolhouse in the valley? What kind of chopping is this anyway? Uneven in rhythm, feeble in stroke? Trust Stubby Pringle is chopped wood enough for cook stove and fireplace to fill a long freight train to know how an axe shouldn't be handled. Why, there, that does it. That whooping sound can only mean that the blade has hit at an angle and bounced away without even biting. Well, some dong-bong, ding-busted, dang-blatted fool's going to be cutting off some of his own toes. Well, he pulls the roan around to the right. He is Stubby Pringle, born to tune of bawling bulls and blatting calves, branded at birth, cowman raised and cowman to the marrow, and no true cowman rides on without stopping to check anything strange on the range. Roan chomps on bit, annoyed at interruption. It remembers who is in the saddle. It sighs and obeys. They move quickly in dark of night past boles of trees, jet black against dim grayness of crusted snow on ground. Light shows faintly ahead. Lantern light through a small oiled paper window. Why, yes, of course, just where it has been for 8 months now, the Henderson place. Man and woman and small girl and waist-high boy, homesteaders. Not even fools, homesteaders, worse than that, out of their minds altogether, all of them, out here anyway, betting at the government that they can stave off starving for 5 years in exchange for 160 acres of land. Land that just might be able to support 7 jackrabbits, 2 coyotes, and 9 rattlesnakes, and maybe all 4 thin steers to a whole section in a good year. Homesteaders, always out of almost everything. Money and food and tools and smiles and joy of living. Everything except maybe hope and stubborn endurance. Stubby Pringle nudges the reluctant roan along. In patch light from the window, by a tangled pile of dead tree branches, he sees a woman. Her face is gray and pinched and tired. An old stocking cap is pulled down on her head. Ragged man's jacket bumps over long woolsy dress and clogs arms as she tries to swing an axe into a good-sized branch on the ground. Whooping sound, an axe bounces and barely misses an ankle. "Quit that," says Stubby sharp. He swings the roan in close. He looks down at her. She drops axe and backs away, frightened. She is ready to bolt into 2-room bark slab shack. She looks up. She sees that haphazard, scrambled features under low hat brim are crinkled in what could be a grin. She relaxes some hand on door latch. "Ma'am," says Stubby, "you trying to cripple yourself?" She just stares at him. "Man's work," he says. "Where's your man?" "Inside," she says. Then quick, "He's sick." "Bad?" says Stubby. "Was," she says. "Doctor that was here this morning thinks he'll be all right now, only he's almighty weak, all wobbly, and sleeps most of the time." "Sleeps," says Stubby, indignant, "when there's wood to be chopped. Oh, he's been almighty tired," she says, quick and defensive. "Even afore he took sick, just wore out." She is rubbing cold hands together, trying to warm him. "He tired," she says, proud. "Only a while ago, couldn't even get his pants on, just fell flat on the floor." Stubby looks down at her. "And you ain't tired?" he says. "Oh, I ain't got time to be tired," she says, "not with all I gotta do." Stubby Pringle looks off past dark boles of trees at last low ridge top that hides valley and schoolhouse. "I reckon I could spare a bit of time," he says. "Likely they ain't much more'n started yet," he says. He looks at the woman. He sees gray, pinched face. He sees cold shivering under bumpy jacket. "Ma'am," he says, "get on in there and warm your gizzard some. I'll just chop you a bit of wood." Roan stands with dropping reins, ground tied, disgusted, shakes his head to send icicles tinkling from bit and bridle. stopped in midst of an epic run, wind-eaten, mild goblin, iron-boned, and dynamite fuel, and for what? For silly chore of chopping. 15 feet away, Stubby Pringle chops wood. Moon is rising over last low ridge top, and its light filtered through the trees shines on leaping blade. Ha! He is Stubby Pringle, moon-struck maverick of the Triple X, born with axe in his hands, with strength of stroke and muscles, weaned on whetstone, fed on cornwood, raised to fell whole forests. He is 10 feet tall, and axe is enormous in moonlight, and chips fly like storm flakes of snow, and blade slices through branches thick as his arm, through logs as thick as his thigh. He leans axe against a stump, and he spreads arms wide and scoops up whole cords of wood at a time, and strides to door and kicks it open. Both corners of front room by fireplace are piled full now, floor to ceiling. Good wood, stout wood, seasoned wood, wood enough for a whole wicked week of winter, a whole wicked winter week. Chore done and done right. Stubby looks around him. Fire is burning bright and well fed, working on warmth. Man lies in big old bed along opposite wall, blanket over eyes, closed face gray pale, snoring long and slow. Woman fusses with something at old wood stove. Stubby steps to doorway to back room. He pulls aside a hanging cloth. Faint in dimness inside, he sees 2 low bunks, and under one an old quilt, a curly-headed small girl, and in the other, under the other old quilt, a boy who could be waist-high, awake and standing. He sees them in quiet sleep and sound. Cute little devils, he says. He turns back, and the woman is coming toward him, cup of coffee in hand, strong and hot and steaming. Coffee the kind to warm the throat and gizzard of chore-doing, hard-chopping cowhand on a cold winter night. He takes the cup and raises it to his lips, drains it in 2 gulps. "Thank you, ma'am," he says. "That was right kindly of you." He sets the cup on table. "I got to be getting along." He starts toward the outer door. He stops, hand on door latch. Something is missing in 2-room shack. Well, trust Stubby Pringle to know what. "Where is your tree?" he says. "Kids got to have a Christmas tree." He sees woman sink down in chair. He hears a sigh come from her. "I ain't had time to cut one," she says. "I reckon not," says Stubby. "Man's job anyway," he says. "I'll get it for you. Won't take a minute, and then I got to be going." He strides out, scoops up axe, and strides off up slope some where small pines climb. He stretches tall and his legs lengthen, and he towers huge among trees, swinging with 10-foot steps. Why, he is Stubby Pringle, born an expert on Christmas trees, nursed on pine needles, weaned on pine cones, and raised with an eye for size and shape and symmetry. There, perfect, a beauty, grown for this and for nothing else. Axe blade slices keen and swift tree topples. He strides back with tree on shoulders. He rips leather whangs from his saddle and lashes 2 pieces of wood to tree bottom crosswise so tree can stand up upright again. Stubby Pringle strides into shack carrying tree, sets it up center in front room, and stands straight, trim and straight and perky and proud and pointed. "Well, there you are, ma'am," he says. "Get your things out and start a decorating. I gots to be going." He moves toward outer door. He stops in the doorway. He hears a sigh behind him. "We ain't got no things," she says. "I was figuring to buy some, but sickness took all the money." Stubby Pringle looks off at low last ridgetop, Hyden Valley and schoolhouse. "I reckon I still got a bit of time," he says. "They'll be whooping it mighty late." He turns back, closing door. He sheds hats and gloves and bandanas and jacket. He moves about, checking everything in the sparse front room. He asks for things, and the woman jumps up to get a few of what she has. He tells her what to do, and she does. He does plenty himself, with this and that. With that magic, wonders arrive. Why, he is Stubby Pringle, born to poverty and hard work, weaned on nothing and fed on less, raised to make do with the least possible and make the most of that. Pinto beans strung on thread, bright in tree and firelight, and lantern light like strings of store-bought beads. Strips of one bandana cut with shears from sewing box, bobs and bows on branches end like gay red flowers. Snippets of fleece from jacket lining sprinkled over tree glisten like fresh fall of snow. Miracles flow from strong blunt fingers through bits of old paper bag and dabs of flower paste into linked chains and twisted small streamers and 2 jaunty little hats and 2 smart little boats with sails. Got to finish it right, says Stubby Pringle. From strong blunt fingers come 5 pointed stars, or a star triple thickness to make it stiff, twisted bit of old wire to hold it upright. He fastens this to topmost tip of topmost bough. He wraps lone bandana left around throat and jams battered hat on his head and shrugs into now skimpy lined jacket. A nice right little tree, he says. All you got to do now is get out what you got for the kids and put it under. I really got to be going. And he starts toward the outer door. What do you think's going to happen next? Can you guess? He stops in open doorway. He hears the sigh behind him. He knows without even looking around the woman is slumped into old rocking chair. We ain't got anything for him, she says, only now this tree, which I don't mean isn't a fine, grand tree. It's more'n we'd had, except for you. Stubby Pringle stands in open doorway looking out into cold, clean moonlight night. Somehow he knows without turning head 2 tears are sliding down thin pinched cheeks. You go along, she says. They're good young'uns. They know how it is. They ain't expecting a thing. Stubby Pringle stands in open doorway looking out at last ridge top that hides valley and schoolhouse. All the more reason, he says soft to himself. All the more reason something should be there when they wake. He sighs too. I'm a dong bongin' ding busted dang blatted fool, he says, but I reckon I still got a mite more time. Likely they'll be sashaying around till it's most morning. Stubby Pringle strides on out, leaving door open. He strides back, closing door with heel behind him. In one hand, he has burlap bag wrapped around paper parcel. In the other hand, he has squarish chunk of good pine wood. He tosses bag parcel into lap folds of woman's apron. Unwrap it, he says. There's the makings for a right cute dress for the little girl. Needle and threader like you can whip it up in no time. I'll just whittle me out something for the boy. Moon is high and cold, cold sky. Frosty clouds drift up there with it. Tiny flakes of snow float through upper air. Down below by a 2-room shack droops a disgusted cow pony roan, ground tied, drooping like statue snow-crusted. It is accepting the inescapable destiny of its kind, which is to wait for its rider, to conserve the deep-bottom dynamite energy, to be ready to race to the last margin of motion when waiting is done. Inside the shack, fire in the fireplace cheerily gobbles wood, good wood, stout wood, seasoned wood, warm in 2 rooms well. Man lies on bed, turned on side, curled up some, snoring slow and steady, and woman sits in rocking chair sewing. Her head nods slow and drowsy, and her eyelids sag weary, but her fingers fly stitch, stitch, stitch. A dress is shaped under her hands, small and flounced with a little puff sleeves. Fine dress, fancy dress, dress for smiles and joy of living. She is sewing pink ribbon around the collar and down front into fluffy bow on back. On a stool nearby sits Stubby Pringle. Piece of good pine wood in one hand, knife in the other hand. Fine knife, splendid knife, all around accomplished knife. Knife he always has with him, 7-bladed knife with 4 for cutting for little to big, and a corkscrew and a can opener and a screwdriver. Big cutting blade has done its work. Little cutting blade is in use now. Why, he is Stubby Pringle, born with feel for knives in hand, weaned on an emery will, fed on shavings, raised to whittle his way through the world. Tiny chips fly and shavings flutter. There in his hands out of good pine wood something is shaping. A horse. Yes, flop-eared, ewe-neck, cat-nipped horse. Flop-eared head is high on ewe-neck, stretched out, sniffing wind, snorting into the distance. Cat hips are hunched forward, caught in a crouch for forward leap. It is a horse fit to carry a waist-high boy to utmost edge of eternity and back. Stubby Pringle carves swift and sure. Little cutting blade makes final little cutting snitches. Yes, tiny mottlings and markings, make no mistaken, it is a strawberry roan. He closes knife and puts it in pocket. He looks up. Dress is finished in woman's lap, but woman's head is dropped down in exhaustion. She sits slumped deep in rocking chair, and she too snores slow and steady. Stubby Pringle stands up. He takes dress and puts it under tree. Fine dress, fancy dress, dress waiting now for small girl to wake and wear it with smiles and joy for living. He sets wooden horse beside it. Fine horse, proud horse, snorting into the distance. Horse, cat hips, couch, waiting now for high or waist-high boy to wake and ride it all around the world. Quietly he piles wood on fire and banks ashes around to hold it in for morning. Quietly he pulls on hat and wraps bandana around and shrugs into skimpy lined jacket. He looks at old rocking chair and tired woman slumped in it. He strides out to outer door, leaving door open. Strides back, closing door with heel behind. He carries other burlap bag wrapped around box of candy of fine chocolates, fancy chocolates with variegated interiors. Gently he lays this in lap of woman. Gently he takes big old shawl from the wall nail and lays this over her. He stands by the big old bed and looks down at the snoring man. Poor devil, he says, ain't fair to forget him. He takes knife from pocket, fine knife, 7-bladed knife, and lays it on blanket on bed. He picks up gloves and blows out lantern, and swift as sliding moon shadow, he is gone. High, high up frosty clouds scuttle across face of moon. Wind whips through topmost tips of tall pines. What is that hurtles like hurricane far down there on upslope of last low ridge, scattering drifts, smashing through brush, snorting defiance at a distance? Why, it's flop-eared, ewe-neck, cat-hipped roan, iron-boned and dynamite fuel, ramming full gallop down through the dark of night. Firm in saddle is Stubby Pringle, spurs a jingle, toes a tingle, out on prowl, ready to howl. Heading for the dance at the schoolhouse in the valley. Why, he is 10 feet tall, great as a grizzly, and the roan is gigantic with wings soaring upward in 30-foot leaps. They top out and roan rears high, pawing stars out of the sky and drops down, cat hips hunched for fresh leaping down. Well, hold it, Stubby, hold hard on the reins. Do you see what is happening on out there in the valley? Tiny lights that are schoolhouse windows are winking out. Tiny dark shapes moving about are horsemen riding off, or wagons pulling away. Moon is dropping down in the sky, haloed in frosty mist. Dark gray clouds dip and swoop around sweep of horizon. Cold winds weave, rustling through ice-coated bushes and trees. What is that moving slow and lonesome up snow-covered mountainside? It is flop-eared, ewe-necked, cat-hip roan. Just that, nothing more. Small cow pony, worn and weary, taking its rider back to clammy bunk in cold line cabin. Slumped in saddle is Stubby Pringle. Head down, shoulders sagged. He is just another of far scattered, poorly paid, patch-clothes cowhands who inhabit these parts. Just that and something more. He is the biggest thing there is in the whole wide roster of the human race. He is a man who has given of himself, of what little he has and is, to bring smiles and joy of living to others along his way. He jogs along, slump sagged in saddle, thinking of none of this. He is thinking of dances undanced, of floorboards unstomped. It always makes me tear up. of willing women left unwhirled. He jogs along, half asleep in saddle, and he is thinking now of bygone Christmas seasons and of boy born to poverty and hard work and make do pouring in flicker of firelight over ragged old Christmas picture book. And suddenly he hears something. The tinkle of sleigh bells. Sleigh bells? Well, yes, I'm telling this straight. He and Roan are weaving through thick clumped brush. Winds are sighing high overhead up the mountainside and lower down where they're whipping mists of snow flurries all around him. He can see nothing in mystic moving dimness, but he can hear the tinkle of sleigh bells, faint but clear, ghostly but unmistakable. And suddenly he sees something, movement off to the left, swift as wind, glimmers only through bush and mist and whirling snow, but unmistakable again. Antlered heads high, frosty breath, streaming bodies, rushing swift and silent, floating in a flash of movement past, seeming to leap in air alone, needing no touch of ground beneath. Reindeer? Yes, reindeer, strong and silent and fleet out of some far frozen northland, marked on no map. Reindeer swooping down and leaping past and rising again and away, strong and effortless and fleeting, and with them hard on their heels, almost lost in swirling snow, mist of their passing, vague and formless, but there somewhere, big and bulky, with runners like sleigh, and a flash of white beard whipping in the wind, and crack of long whip snapping. Who do you think that is? Startled Roan has seen something too. It stands rigid, head up and staring left and forward. Stubby Pringle, body a tingle, stares too. Out of the dark of night ahead, forward, with moan of wind, comes a long-drawn chuckle, deep chuckle, jolly and cheery and full of smiles and joy of living, and with it a long-drawn words. Well done, partner. Stubby Pringles shakes his head. He brushes an icicle from his nose. And I didn't even have a single drink, he says. Only coffee, and can't count that. Reckon I'm getting soft in the head. But he is cowman through and through. Cowman through to the marrow. He can't ride on without stopping to check anything strange on the range. He swings down and heads off to the left. He fumbles in jacket pocket and finds a match, strikes it, holds it cupped and bent down. There they are, unmistakable. Reindeer tracks, by golly. Stubby Pringle stretches up tall. Stubby Pringle swings into saddle. Roan needs no slap of spurs to unleash strength and upward surge. Up steep mountainside, it knows. There in the saddle once more is Stubby Pringle, moon-struck maverick of the Triple X, all around hard-proved, hard-holding cowhand, 10 feet tall, needin' horse gigantic with wings iron-boned and dynamite-fueled to take him home to the little line cabin in some few weeks of sleep before another day's hard work. Stubby Pringle sleeps into cold, clammy bunk. He wriggles vigorous to warm blanket under and blanket over. Was it worth all that riding? Comes voice of old Jake Hanlon from the other bunk on the wall. Why, sure, says Stubby. I had me a right good time. All right now. You say anything you want. I know you know any dong, bong, ding, busted, dang, blatted fool ought to know that icicles breaking off branches can sound to drowsy ears something like sleigh bells, and that blurry eyes half asleep can see strange things, that deer and elk make tracks like those of reindeer, and that wind sighing and soughing and moaning and maundering down mountains and through piney tree tops can sound like someone shaping words, but we can talk, and it would mean nothing to Stubby Pringle. Stubby is wiser than we are. He knows, he will always know who it was, plump and jolly and belly bouncing that spoke to him that night out on wind-whipped winter-worn mountainside. Well done, partner. The end. And that's the story of Stubby Pringles. Merry Christmas.